I have to make sure I've got my facts straight because again, I've got a license to practice in the state, in Florida, Texas, and I need to make sure that I'm gathering the proper documentation. I'm getting the proper facts of loss from the insured. I have to know how to sort of have a rebuttal to any and all of these letters that they send. A lot of them a lot of the insurance companies send an RFI, request for information letter, that I've got to answer to, and I've got to make sure that I'm answering these questions correctly.
Hi, this is Daniel Lakstins, and you're listening to the Roofing Business Builder Podcast. Now, I've been in the roofing industry for over 30 years, and I am your personal commercial roofing guru. Now, today, we're talking about insurance adjusting, not just insurance adjusting, but public insurance adjusting. And so, if you're a roofer, have you ever worked with a PA before? Or are you someone that wants to become a PA or public adjuster? Well, this show's for you. I have a special guest. His name is Vince Perri. But before we get into that interview, let's do our intention for the day. The intention for this episode is I am great at helping others. I am great at helping others. Now, in your life, people have helped you along the way too, but we are great at helping others, whether it's our employees or whether it is our customers. And especially when it comes to, helping someone that has storm damage. Maybe you run into one of these jobs where the customer has storm damage and you are great at helping them. And the reason why is also you're bettering yourself, you're educating yourself. And so keep doing this, but stay in that mindset by saying, I am great at helping others. Now, today we're talking about insurance adjusting, but using a PA, the public adjuster, to help that customer actually get the true funds from legitimate damage on their roof. So I have a special interview with Vince Perri. Vince, he's a public adjuster, he's a business owner, and he's also an educator. So he actually not only has a podcast where he's teaching how to be a good public adjuster, but he also has a step-by-step course where he can help you get up to speed to be as good as he is today. And that's amazing, isn't it? So let's get in and listen to this special interview with Vince Perri. So let's get into talking more. And again, guys, this is my guest, Vince Perri. He's the commercial claims advocate. He's the CEO of the Elite Resolutions, and he teaches public adjusters. And that's an amazing coaching program that you have. Before we get into talking about the coaching program, can you explain to us how you got into claim adjusting? I mean, you're a tennis pro. You owned a education. What did you own? It was
Tennis
like an
academy.
education business,
The tennis academy.
That's so cool. What was the name of it?
It was the Miami Elite Tennis Academy.
Wow, that's so badass.
Yeah.
So how, I always say that the roofing industry, you don't choose it, it chooses you, it finds you. So how did you get into commercial claims?
So I was teaching tennis, and my dream was always to become a sports agent. That was like my ultimate dream for years. From probably 8th grade, I wanted to be a sports agent. I knew that's what I wanted to do. This is what I want to be. So I went into college on a sports management major. I graduated as a sports management major, but then around senior year of college, I started to do a little bit more research, and I come to find out that really, if you want to take the sports agent route, you should go to law school. And I'm like,
wow.
Well, we already talked about school, right? I'm not very good at school. So when I heard that, I'm like, this is kind of a bummer. But like anything else, I gave it my best shot. I took the Kaplan course, studied for the LSAT like crazy for probably about 6 months until I finally took the LSAT, got a not so good grade. I forgot what it was. I can't remember what the grade was, but it wasn't very good. And I think it was like a 50. I think that's the way he scored it. And I'm like, okay. So I started studying again. And then I realized I sort of stopped myself, and I'm like, okay, If this is this what I want to do, go back to school, and then I'm having trouble with the LSAT. How's it going to go for my first year of law school, which everybody says that they flunk out? How's it going to be for when I have to take the bar? Like, this is just like, I feel like this is going to be a domino effect of a failure that's going to eventually come if I don't get out of this now.
Uh-huh.
So I kept teaching tennis. I was just teaching tennis at a tennis academy, and I started teaching this guy who was coming for 4 lessons a week at $70 a pop. I'm
Wow.
like, dude, where do you find the time and the money to come for all these lessons? It was a great gig for me. I was like, oh, this is great for me, but where do you find the time and the money to do this? And he's like, oh, I'm a public adjuster. And I'm like, what the hell is that? So he explains it a little bit, but I go back home and I do a little researching online, and I find a blog that compares a public adjuster to a sports agent, where basically you're representing your client, you're negotiating against the insurance company or the sports franchise, and you're sort of trying to get them as much money as you can on their claim. So I'm like, that's it. This is it. This is what I'm going to do. I knew right then and there, this is what I want to do.
Wow.
So that's how I fell into it. I worked for State Farm for a year. I couldn't handle the corporate life, even though I gave it a shot. And then I quit in 2008. And I jumped and I started working for this guy. And I actually went back into teaching again, because in public adjusting is strictly commission. So I needed to have some sort of income. So I went to teaching full-time, public adjusting full-time. And that's pretty much it. You fast forward to where I'm at now. It's now I've got my own firm. I've got the commercial claims advocate, and I'm not teaching tennis anymore, but life is good. Can't complain.
Yeah. And it's still rewarding because you are seeing people grow and learning something, and you had a share in that. So,
well, I think it's funny because I taught for 15 years. And then when I moved to Tampa from Miami, I no longer was teaching. I got out of the tennis industry. I went full time into public adjusting. And just 3 years later, I've fallen again back into teaching and to mentoring. And now I'm teaching public adjusters. And I just think it's funny how, like, that teaching thing, if it's inside of you, it doesn't go away, you know?
that's amazing. Now, when you're doing adjusting, is it mostly on roofing claims, or were you just doing any kind of claim back then?
I would say mostly, if you're going to ask the question, if it's mostly, I would say it's mostly water damage claims, but that's really because we didn't have many hurricanes for a while. After Hurricane Katrina and Wilma, we didn't have another one until Irma, which was about 15 years.
Yeah.
But then once Irma hit, I mean, I was a good 3 years straight with pretty much only roof claims. And now it's just kind of mixed.
Wow. That's cool. So, I was wanting to get into asking too, maybe certain things. Can you talk more about, like, maybe things that the roofers can learn from your perspective? Sometimes maybe the documentation, what they should do, how much they should do, and maybe some mistakes that roofers make that maybe you can give advice upon.
Yeah, I think inspections, their initial inspection is probably the most important part of any roofer's job if they're going to end up putting a claim through. Making sure that they document the damage as best they can, making sure that the damage is what it is. Because if
Legitimate,
right?
right?
Well, because if they want to avoid a fight, if it's a question as to whether the damage is wind damage or not, or whether it's hail damage or not, I know it's very important to get that job signed and to get that job. I know how important it is, but sometimes it's not worth the fight.
Yeah.
You know, if you feel in your heart that that's not hail damage, if you feel in your heart that this roof is just old and these shingles are lifting because fact is it's just old. I can't see one single crease. I can't see one single missing shingle. I can't see one single piece of real legitimate hail damage. Don't just put it in just to put it in. Just from my experience, it's not worth the headache. You're only going to end up in litigation. And even in litigation, it's a 50-50 shot whether that claim is going to get paid or not. So do you want to get paid now, go on to that next house and maybe get a good claim there? Or do you want to wait to get paid a year, 2 years from now, and you may not even get paid? So
That's
that
brilliant.
I would say documenting in the beginning, making sure the damage is what it is, and then taking that documentation. I would suggest, if I can give any piece of advice, putting together, if we could train roofers to put together a nice, like, I want to use the word scientific. I don't mean actual science, but the smarter and cooler it sounds. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, just use really big words as to, the sort of damage. And I believe that the wind speeds came from this. Like, technically, that's not your That's not stick to roofing, but try to put together a report, not just photos and not just an estimate, but put together, write a letter with your letterhead, and eventually you'll have a template. So it'll only take you a few times. As when it's wind damage, have one for wind damage, have one for hail damage, have one for both, where
Ooh, this
you
is really
have
good,
looked
guys.
you have
Yeah.
looked at the damage and you feel based on this area of the roof and this section of the roof and the crease in this shingle here, and you could see in this picture here. It'll take some time, but once you get like just a letter, all it really has to do is a letter. And I'm not a roofer, okay? I'm not that public adjuster who has ever, if you watch any of my videos or any of my, I have never admitted to being an expert in construction. That's really not my thing. I
Hmm.
hire roofers for that. I hire engineers for that. My job is relationship building, negotiating, and really just getting these claims moved through. But what helps me a lot as a public adjuster, and you guys can do this on your own, you don't need to hire a public adjuster, but along with your photos and along with your estimate, just put together a Word document with your letterhead, print that sucker out, or save it as a PDF, and just really break down exactly what you saw and try to make it sound as scientific as possible and submit that to the insurance company. I'm pretty sure you're going to be surprised at how much those claims turn into dollars just by put your license number on there. Make sure you clarify your years of experience. Put all that stuff in there. The insurance company will look at that, and you might avoid an engineering inspection sent out by the insurance company. You might avoid that low payment because now they're looking at it and they're like, all right, well, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. I see the photos. We did the inspection. Let's pay the claim.
I love it because that's in Texas. I know that they kind of handcuffed us. The insurance association lobbied and then got the law passed where, quote unquote, they're not allowed to negotiate with the insurance adjuster. And I think I've been informed something differently recently. Maybe it was you. But because all of my customers, I had 120 roofers that were my customers, and they were all saying, well, I can't now, if I'm trying to talk to them, say, no, this needs to be fixed, that was illegal for them to do. And the truth is, I was like thinking to myself, well, if you're at a doctor and a doctor wants to do surgery on you, and say it's a back, and they're saying that it's the seventh thoracic vertebrae, and it's the posterior facet that needs to be adjusted. It's all this technical stuff. So you'd have to hire a professional, the doctor, to actually talk to the insurance company and say, no, you guys aren't doctors. I'm a doctor. This is what's necessary. It's kind of like in the roofing industry. If we have a very good roofer, we have a roofer that's honest and fair and is only looking for legitimate damage, then they are the professionals. So who else could not explain that to the insurance company and say that, no, this is legitimate damage. Oh, and then this is the terminology you're saying. Well, so there was wind that came from the northwest, and as it struck the edge of the roof, it loosened the fasteners. Let's see here. I'm trying to think of some words that you'd be using though, but it's like the scupper from the parapet wall, removing the coping, and then, but fortunately, it stopped right there at the wind. The wind tab. So, but yeah, so you're saying throw in a bunch of words like parapets, scupper.
And it doesn't, again, it doesn't have to be make believe. It is what it is. I'm just saying it sounds a lot better when you, like, for me, when I'm writing letters on a daily basis to the carrier, I'm always talking about, pre-loss conditions, duties after the loss, just things like that. I can't think of it now, but things like that where you throw in there. And I mean, I don't know whether it makes a difference or not. Maybe it doesn't, but I think it does.
Yeah, no, and the truth is they could also get a wind calculation that was based upon there, and you'd know what the engineer was wanting. Say if there's zones 1, 2, and 3, you start throwing stuff like that. That we checked out zones, the zones 3, we saw that the enhancements were made in those areas, and yet the storm still, for if it's a wind claim, whatever. But that's interesting. I like that. So not trip up, sound as professional as we should sound as roofers that know what we're doing. So I like that. That's a great advice. Um, is there any other best practices that roofers should be considering when it comes to legitimate damage and how to document that properly?
I mean, before you went to the document, I was going to say hire a public adjuster.
Well, that we can get into that though. What are some misconceptions that workers or roofing contractors may have about working with public adjusters?
Seems to me like the biggest complaint that roofers get about working with public adjusters is that the claims don't get paid fast enough. They don't get settled in time. I think they have to understand that we're not just going for the roof. Usually we're going for interior damage as well. Usually we're going for fence damage. We're going for all these different things. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Usually roofers, they're just going for the roof. That's it. It's pretty much just roof and
I've had a
nothing
few
else.
customers that did go for others too. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, they really should go for, if you're a general contractor, why not go ahead and get the HVAC? Why not get the siding that was all damaged, right?
Right. And the other thing that I'm looking at too is I have to make sure I've got my facts straight because again, I've got a license to practice in the state in Florida, Texas, and I need to make sure that I'm gathering the proper documentation. I'm getting the proper facts of loss from the insured. I have to know how to sort of have a rebuttal to any and all of these letters that they send. A lot of the insurance companies send an RFI, request for information letter, that I've got to answer to, and I've got to make sure that I'm answering these questions correctly. I have to make sure that I'm responding to these letters. If I don't respond to these letters, then if the claim gets denied, there's no attorney that could fight it because the attorney's going to be like, well, they sent this letter. Why didn't you respond? There's all these things. And there's like 6 or 7 duties after the laws that you have to abide by, that if you don't abide by them, it's going to hurt your claim tremendously. There's a lot of policy language that now, it used to be where there was maybe 2 or 3 kinds of policies. Now every single policy reads differently. So if I'm a public adjuster, I'm going to go in and I'm going to make sure that before we even submit this thing, we're going to have a review of the policy. We're going to make sure all our I's are dotted, all our T's are crossed, as opposed to a roofer who I'm assuming would just normally, just file the claim and submit an estimate. And then that's it. That's pretty much it. I'll have my arguments for the roof and then that's that. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it, into the actual claims process behind the scenes that I think a lot of people aren't aware of. And I think too many roofing companies, they get too bogged down with this stuff, especially a lot of roofing companies that has their own little claims department. I'm sure they know that there's a lot that goes into it. Why spend your time doing that when you can go ahead and be signing more jobs, And if there is,
this is a brilliant reasoning that you have here, because sometimes a roofer gets so they're feeling desperate. Like, I found this, I got this. If it's not good, just let it go. I've walked away from $1 million project before because I knew it was going to be a bad situation. It just,
right.
There's lack of education on the project. It was going to be bad for me. And I'd much rather go out and find something else that is going to make me money and is going to make you money, or, all of us involved make us money. But if you get caught up with these things where you're sitting around or it's not really legitimate, and then next, it's a waste of everyone's time, isn't it?
I think if a roofer could find a public adjuster, a good, responsible public adjuster that they could communicate with, that they could, have again, constant communication with and get status updates. Like we have our CRM sort of set up where we put the roofing company or whoever wants to be responsible for it in our CRM so that they could see an update as to what's going on with the claim. I mean, I think that's very important because it frees you up. It's like we were just talking about, right? Entrepreneurship. It's very important to make sure you're hiring the right people for the different things. And you could hire some people that you want working directly under you, or you could sub stuff out to other companies and other things. I think that's where if the public adjuster roofing relationship right there could be very beneficial to the roofing company, because they'll have a public adjusting company responsible, taking care of all the claims. And then you'll have, and for us, I want that roofing estimate. I want that roofing report. I want that documentation, that photo evidence. I want that in my file so that I can have everything I need to sort of attack the insurance company.
I love it. And, we didn't even go into defining what a public adjuster is versus a regular claim adjuster. I don't know if we should mention it right now for some of those rippers listening and saying, this is awesome, but so, I mean, the insurance company
doesn't want to necessarily pay out money. They're willing to pay out money, right, for legitimate claims. But I do know a lot of insurance companies that will hire engineers to come in, and when the customer's like, oh my goodness, we have an engineer coming, the insurance company loves me. But what is that engineer really trying to do when he comes out to get on that roof for the insurance company?
Yeah, I mean, he's representing the insurance company. If the engineer goes out there and says that the claim must be paid and this is indeed wind damage on every single one, then guess who's not going to be hired by the insurance company anymore? So, a lot of those engineering reports too are just opinion based. They're not even like factually based. I don't understand why they don't get into more details with it, and they're always the same. It's always pre-existing damage, age-related wear and tear. It's always like a lot of the same stuff, so.
And what I found too is, is that a lot of times the engineer that comes out is also trained. I mean, because they're working for the company. So, but they're also trained to, they don't look at the policy. They're only looking at, usually trying to suggest how to repair something, put a Band-Aid on this roof, where the roofer or a public adjuster, they don't work for that insurance company. The public adjuster is going to look at the policy and then analyze, you could say this better than me, but you know what I'm saying? They're going to analyze what's in the policy, find out what legitimate damage, then match it properly. But is that where you see a disconnect between, because the insurance company is trying to save money? Do
you blame them?
No,
they're the ones cutting the checks. At the end of the day, they're the ones that are cutting the checks, but they also get that check in every single month by the policyholder in the premium. They're a business, right? Their two largest expenses are their employees and claim payouts. And at the end of every year, they do an audit. And they have to check in. They have to keep a certain sort of ratio as to premium payments received and claims paid out. And that's really
what it's all business, right? Yeah,
it's a business. It is what it is. I mean, they're privately owned, and it's just a business.
The only thing is that I'm concerned about is I've seen deception. I'm not saying that insurance companies are that way. I'm just saying I have seen deception on the part where they did not want to pay out a legitimate claim. And what they do, tell me if I'm wrong about this, because I'd like to know. But I'd get a phone call. We had problems with one of our properties, and then I'd call them, and they're like, "Well, just go out and get 3 roofing bids." I'm like, "Why? What are you talking about? Go to get 3? Well, you need to go get 3, and then we'll look at those, and then we'll pay." I'm like, "But you guys have a black book. I mean, if someone wrecks into my Beamer or my Mercedes, and there's legitimate damage, it's totaled, or maybe it's not. But the thing is I'm not going to go to a used car lot and get 3 bids on a Ford, a Chevy. It's like, no, mine was a Beamer with heated seats. It had a big, huge moonroof, and they know. So they get the black book out when it comes to car damage. And they ask you all those questions. That what kind of rims did you have? The cheap ass rims, or did you have those really fancy ones? I had the fancy ones. Here's a picture of them, and then they actually then pay you for what you lost, the actual loss. And am I wrong though? Is it something that just happened to me, or does this happen very often that an insurance company is duping a person to get just 3 roofers that are desperate for money, desperate to land a job? And they're not going to go back and give them the actual value of what was in that roof, Or am I right about that? Or how do you
I had an insurance company right now on one of my claims that there's this like service. I don't know if I wrote it down or something. There's this service where they can go on, and this particular service sends out and gets 3 bids on one roof. It's one service that gets 3 separate bids. And I'm like, what is this? And I'm like, oh, this is a service and it's 3 separate bids and we're going to pay you the highest one. I'm like, but did anybody even go out to the roof? No, they don't physically go out to the roof. I'm like, how can we have a legitimate bid if they didn't even go out to the roof? I said, number 1. I said, number 2, I said, who is the owner of this one search engine that you're using to find these 3 companies? Like if you told me that you actually physically went to 3 separate companies and 3 separate companies went out to do a physical inspection, I said, I would totally consider it. I said, but I mean, I've got one estimate and you've got these three that are from these people I don't know that haven't even been out to the home. I'm like, can you understand how this is going to be a little bit difficult for me to agree with?
Mm-hmm.
She's like, oh, well, we kept going back and forth. And I mean, at the end of the day, to be honest, my style is more like if we could come to a happy median, if we could find a number that the roofer's okay with, that the client's okay with, that I could end up with some money and everybody's okay. I don't mind taking a little bit less, to be honest. That's sort of my style. And that's not a lot of other public adjusters.
I love that.
A
That's
lot of public
honesty.
adjusters, they want to fight tooth and nail for every single dollar. Not me. I'm more of like, hey, let's figure this out. Let's try to work this out. And if everybody's happy, everybody's happy. I mean, I've got a roofing company that I work with in Pensacola. I mean, I don't think they've been upset yet. Every single claim that comes my way, and some of them I have to negotiate and figure it out. But I don't
So in
know,
a sense, then I like this better. It's a much better feeling that you get when you're thinking, instead of looking at the insurance companies as the enemy, we can just look at them and say, we don't want them to go out of business. These are our brothers and sisters, our cousins, our uncles. These are our Americans. Are they trying to save money? What you're saying is, yeah, of course they are. What a public adjuster is doing is holding their feet to a legitimate standard, which is what their standard is. But we don't have to screw them. I know people. I know companies that literally got trained on getting probably $3 more a square foot, maybe $5 more a square foot than what would really be necessary. You know what I mean? And then what they did is they took that money that was the legitimate value of what was lost by the customer, and then went back with a shitty ass system, just like just a very little insulation, underlayment, and then boom, just re-roofed it. So for them, it was only costing them, say in normal days terms, they got maybe $9 a square foot, but only put like $4.50 back into the roof. And I feel that's stealing from the customer, because yeah. But here's the thing, though, is what you're saying, though, is we don't want to hurt the insurance companies too much either. So if we can get the legitimate amount of money that's going to get it repaired and still replace, get the same R value, get the same components or what they choose, because I don't have to choose to buy a new Beamer if I got wrecked. I can buy a Lamborghini if I can find one for the same price that I'm getting back from the company. It's like, how did you get a Lamborghini? I'm damn good, But what I'm saying, though, it's like, well, this guy had it for sale, and the Beamer was 60,000. This was 60,000. And it was an even trade. But the insurance company can't tell you what roofer to use or right. Am I right? They can't tell you what product to put back on that building. Right. But I like what you're saying. So that way it happens quicker, is what you're saying, right?
I settle probably about 90% of my claims without having to go to litigation. And a lot of public adjusters, especially in Florida, a lot of our claims end up in litigation. And I just think sometimes it's either, you're writing up too much, or you're writing up what you don't see, or you're just trying to just stick to your number and you don't want to budge from your number. And, really at the end of the day, I think, in my opinion, it's just making the client happy. As long as the client's happy at the end of the day, then all is good.
Yeah, we can all work together, because the reality is there was a storm. The roofer is going to do his part. The insurance company is going to do their part. And then the public adjuster keeps everything, together.
Exactly. I call it, we're the quarterback of the claim.
I
we're
love
the
it.
ones who are, we're making
I've always
calls.
worked with public adjusters here in Texas. I'm still really good friends, go out and grab dinner, sometimes together. And, but
I'm going to introduce you to to one of my guys, Aaron Green. Aaron's been, he works with us now. He's based out of, I think right in between Houston and Texas. He was an IA for State Farm and different insurance companies for about 15 years. And he just jumped over to our side. So if you're looking for a good public adjuster out there, he's your guy.
That's amazing. Yeah. And that's funny, because it's kind of like me. I had a roofing business for 15 years. And then I was on the manufacturing side, specifications, distribution side for like 17 years. So that is so cool. So now tell us more about your program, though. Is this training adjusters, or are we actually training a roofing contractor to about insurance? What kind of program?
I'd like to. So we have one online course right now. It's a Zoom course that we provide once every 3 months. We max it out to just 20 people. We don't like to have more than 20. And it's a 2-day, full day, sort of intense Zoom course where the first day is just intense with me, where I'm basically teaching all the questions that I asked the insured, what I look for in initial inspection, my letters. I actually give copies of all my letters that I sent to the insurance company, how I respond to certain disputes. And then the next day is my experts. I have an attorney, an estimator, and a Google Ads expert that really help train the people on what needs to be done and how to sort of grow their business. I get into like the marketing aspect of it as well. I'd like to eventually, we're going to probably take that course and sort of condense it, record it, and probably sell it online. We're probably going to come up with a level 2 course, more advanced course on sort of the fancy words and stuff like that to use to dispute different things. And then I would like to come up with also one for contractors. Haven't figured out what I want to do yet. Honestly, it probably wouldn't be too much different than the course that I already do for public adjusters. Obviously, roofers would be a little bit more limited, but I think just that contracting course would, just my public adjusters course, contractors that take it would probably get a lot out of it. They'd probably
I think
benefit a
so.
lot.
I think it's especially if they really don't feel comfortable. You know, the reason why we have courses is because there's fear. I remember even when I first got into commercial, you know, my family was residential mostly. My grandfather would always say, stay away from those flat roofs or a lawsuit waiting to happen, you know. And actually Leah, my wife, you know, before when we first met, she was the one that was doing commercial and introduced me. So it was kind of cool. But I think this is a really good idea because you want to have confidence. You want to know what you're talking about. And I think that any roofer that's listening to this podcast should get involved with you guys. So if someone's listening right now, how could a roofing contractor that is interested in taking this training so they can actually not be afraid anymore? You know, how can they get a hold of you and get in touch and join this program?
So I'm easy to find. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook as Vince Perri is my personal page, and then the Commercial Claims Advocate is its own page. On Instagram, I'm Vince Perri, I think _ Commercial Claims Advocate or something like that. And then on LinkedIn, I'm just Vince Perri. We also have our website, commercialclaimsadvocate.com. One thing I'd like to definitely promote is one thing that we do is probably about 8 times a year, we have a meetup. It initially started with just me going to somewhere. Like I started just going to Miami and say, hey, do you want to meet me? You want to meet up? Let's just talk shop. Started with just 10, 15 people. And now we're averaging anywhere from 90 to 110 people that come out to these meetups.
Wow, that's
a lot
incredible.
of people for me to meet. And we like to do it for public adjusters, attorneys, and contractors. And we've got speakers and we've got sponsors. We're trying to grow it even more, see where it goes. And I'd love for any roofing contractors, the more contractors that we have out there, the better it is for everybody. I think we could all learn from each other. And our next one is going to be in Tampa here at the end of this month. We're going to go back down to Miami in November. And then next year, for sure, we will have at least one, probably in the Dallas area, Dallas-Fort Worth.
That's incredible. Oh, and also tell them about your podcast. So you guys, if you want to learn more about insurance claims and the right things to think about, the right things to do, tell us about your podcast.
Yeah, so we've got a wealth of free information out there. The best place I would say is to go to our YouTube channel. It's called the Commercial Claims Show. And basically every single week, we call it Content Wednesday. There's a new video that comes out, whether it be a video where I'm educating everyone on some new kind of topic and new subject. Maybe it's a review of the laser pointer that I'm using, or if it's our Claims Game podcast. The Claims Game podcast, we do it once every 2 weeks, but we're trying to get it to once every week. And it's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, it's on iTunes and Google Podcast.
That's incredible. So guys, check out the Claims Game podcast, guys. So, hey, my special guest has been Vince Perri. He's the CEO of Elite Resolutions. And I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show. Such a wealth of information you shared.
Thank you so much, Daniel. I really appreciate you having me on, man.
So that was my interview with Vince Perri. And wasn't that amazing? We talked about a lot of different things. We learned how that if there's an insurance claim, there's a proper way of going about it, finding legitimate damage, but doing it in such a way where, I mean, there's no greed involved. We're just trying to help the customer, and we can also look at the insurance company as not the enemy. So I really resonated with that. I hope you did too. Oh, and I'll leave notes in the description about how to find Vince and also those other websites. So for the psychological stuff. But now it's time for Did You Know? Did you know that if you're doing commercial roofing and maybe there's nothing that can be seen as damage on a roof, that there still might be damage? So a lot of times you have to use maybe a Sawzall and cut out a square and then flip that square over, and you can see bruising maybe on the material itself or even within the insulation. Sometimes only after one season of hot, cold, the expansion and contraction can happen. And if there's micro fractures under there, then the insurance company is going to pay for that roof and the customer too, because there's going to be problems down the line. So be sure to cut a big square if you feel like there should be legitimate damage. The other thing you can do is look at the HVAC units. If there's large hell marks there, then you're going to know there's going to be some large hell marks on the roof. So once you track those down, if you just see like a scrape or something like that, or it looks like it could get hit, that's where to cut that square. It's like a core cut, but a core is circular. So you do a square cut and pull that up, take it apart. You may have to use a microscope or send that into an engineer to see the microfracturing. And then explain to the customer that those microfractures will spread throughout during thermal shock. That's it for the show, guys. Oh, and if you would, please hit subscribe. Hit the bell if you're watching this on YouTube. But if you're listening to this on the podcast, be sure to subscribe there too. And you can also check out the video version here on YouTube at the Roofing Business Builder Podcast. And lastly, if you are one of those roofers that are needing some help to get over that hump, maybe you're stuck at $1 million or $2 million or $4 million, and you need to get over that hump. The Roofing Business Builder program has a lot of the mindset stuff in the beginning of that program. It will help you. And also, if you're just wanting to start a commercial division and you have a successful residential business, there's a lot of mistakes that a person can make. So be sure to check out my Calendly, and we can do a strategy call and see if you might be a fit for the Roofing Business Builder program. So until next time, I don't always consult on commercial roofing, but when I do, I make millionaires. Stay wealthy, my friends.